So let's see if it kicks on. I believe it now has. Yep, there we are. All right. So I'll give my preamble to everyone who's already been here hearing me talking. So we are the Bits and Bytes Association. This is what we call our industry professional event, where we have an individual who is in the field of IT who comes in and shares a little bit of experience with education, finding a job, working that first job, developing their skills, networking. And we're very fortunate to have Stephen here. And he's a bit of a special case that I'm very excited to have because he's actually been involved with the Bits and Bytes Association. So, Stephen, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Where to start? I'm probably like a lot of people in this call potentially. Tech is my second career. I went back to school at like age 30 into the BIT program. When I did go back to school, I kind of wanted like the full experience because when I was in college prior, I wasn't super focused. So I joined the BBA. I was the president of the BBA for one term. I guess that would have been in like 2018. I can't remember if it was the start or the end of the year, but that doesn't matter. I was lucky enough to get a co-op with the company that I'm at currently. The company's called LotLinx. I'll touch on what we do, I guess, when I'm kind of done this little blurb here. Got on with LotLinx. I was lucky because it was the start of year one, and I got on for an 8-month co-op term, which was awesome. And then got on full time with them in December, like right after exams in December 2019. And I've been on with them since. I started off as a junior DevOps developer. I kind of went into the job not even knowing what DevOps was. I had never even heard the term. I was in school and I wanted to be a web dev, and they were just like, "Hey, you want to do DevOps?" And I was like, "I'll do whatever you want me to do. This is a job. It's sweet." Yeah, and kind of from there, I started off very green. I learned a lot of things from the ground up. And I've matured into, like an intermediate, kind of maybe knocking on the door senior dev at this point. I'm in charge of a lot of things in my department at LotLinx, and I've a pretty good job standing with them, I'd like to think.
Well, that's great. I'm very similar to you. I also joined the BIT program. I was 32. I went to school before this, and it's really interesting. This program is kind of a nice split. There's a lot of people fresh out of high school who have a lot different points of view, and then there's a lot of others who've kind of been around the block a little bit, and it's kind of really fun to do group work with these various people. But so I have a bunch of follow-up questions. First thing, tell me what DevOps is.
What is DevOps? That's a pretty big question because DevOps isn't just a job, it's an ethos. But to kind of break it down, hopefully so it makes sense in the eyes of maybe a term 1, 2, 3-er, is this code that you write that's on your computer. It needs to get from being on your computer to being in production so that people around the world can interact with your application or your API or whatever it is. So what kind of DevOps specializes in is we specialize in building that code, those code files, into functioning applications. There's a lot that goes into there. DevOps focuses a lot on automation. We try to automate as many of our tasks as we can through the entire development lifecycle, whether that's testing, building, deploying. We want to make it as easy as we can for developers to integrate their code into code bases, repos, test their code, test builds on their code, run their code in a development environment, and then finally, when it's met all these different requirements, then finally push it from dev into production, and hopefully do that all with a few clicks of a mouse or a couple commands, and keep it simple. And it's not just building of code. It's the maintaining of the applications. There's a few key components of DevOps. There's continuous integration, and that's like integrating code into a repo, linting the code before it gets in, making sure it's good, that kind of thing. Automating that process. There's continuous deployment or development, which are very simple. And basically that is whenever you push code, it does what it needs to do, and then it gets built and put into production. There's also continuous monitoring. And that's where you build monitors for different things. Ising is a popular one. Prometheus is another one if you're looking at like Kubernetes. And you write like running tests, and you check metrics on things, and then you set up alarms off those, and you have them alert you using a service like PagerDuty or something if there are any issues, and that way you can fix things as soon as possible. But the goal is to make sure nothing breaks, and if it does, it's an outlier situation. But I guess that's more or less kind of what DevOps is in terms of work. To expand on the ethos, it's also about project planning. So DevOps is kind of an iteration on the agile methodology, which is iterative working. This takes the iterative planning process and it kind of works in everything that I talked about in terms of like deploying and testing and all that.
It sounds like one of those things where you're a hero to the back-end developers, but for the end users, if you do your job well, they don't know you exist, kind of thing, right?
Exactly.
So Justin, in the chat here has a question. What are some tools used on your DevOps toolchain?
DevOps toolchain. There's a couple big things. Scripting languages. So we don't really work with compiled programs. We don't write compiled programs to do our work. We write scripts and we kind of manage the running with scripts with different things. We typically pick the right tool for the job. So we choose Ruby. Ruby's kind of our number one pick for scripting languages. And some of our tool chain is Ruby focused. I'll mention that in a sec. Python, also great scripting language, and Bash. So if you're interested in DevOps as a career, definitely pick up one or all three of those languages. They're all, what you do is similar. Syntax is a little bit different. Those are all important. And then there's configuration management. So the company LotLinx that I'm at right now, we're kind of like part of the way into our Kubernetes journey, which is taking containerized applications and managing them with a container orchestration technology like Kubernetes. So that's like the present and the future of what's happening. Some more legacy things, and this is kind of what we're migrating out of, is like a one-to-one application to server kind of topology, where you have an API or an application, and you build out a cloud instance, a node, a server for this said application. You make sure the server is provisioned properly. What we do for the automated provisioning is we use a technology called Terraform. Terraform is kind of like an industry standard in DevOps that allows you to provision things like instances, load balancers, all sorts of different cloud resources with code. So it's called infrastructure as code is the concept behind it, where you're actually writing out your configuration, and that way, anytime you spin up an instance using that configuration, it'll always be the same. To add one step onto that, there's configuration management, and we use a technology called Chef. There's a bunch of different things. There's Ansible, there's Chef, there's Salt. We use Chef. Chef is Ruby. Chef is a Ruby technology. So, if you're writing, Chef cookbooks or recipes, you're more or less writing Ruby code. And what this is this isn't provisioning an instance. This is installing things onto an instance or getting the instance into the state it needs to be able to run an application. So if you're installing like a web server like Nginx or Apache, you're going to write a cookbook that's going to install that. If you need to, download or pull something down from an API, you can automate that. This Chef or configuration management is the automation of, setting up a server for production or development purposes. We use a couple different like CI/CD pipelines. Our old one that we use is Jenkins. Jenkins is very popular. I'm sure I'm sure if you've looked into DevOps, you've heard about Jenkins. Our new tech, the one that we have integrated with our Kubernetes clusters, we like to use GitLab. And actually, I did the migration. I have a multinational company with like hundreds of employees doing all of our deployment and CI/CD on free GitLab. We don't pay a cent, which I think is pretty cool. That's an accomplishment I'm pretty proud of. Yeah, so GitLab CI/CD, GitLab's awesome. GitLab's like the darling of DevOps. If any of you are really keeners, I suggest trying to set up your own GitLab instance. Like it's a Dockerized application. If you have like a cloud server on AWS or GCP, you should be able to do it pretty easily, and you'll have your own GitLab, which is cool. So from there, we get into monitoring. I touched on monitoring. Isinga is our old legacy technology where you write checks. We integrate that with PagerDuty. So depending on like the severity level that we've coded for the check, PagerDuty will alert. There's a whole bunch of different tech in PagerDuty. It texts me and then it pings me in Slack. And then Prometheus is the new containerized application monitoring tool that we use. It's complicated. Actually, it's really hard. But that brings up a good point, and that's learning and school. When I was a student, there were like some points of frustration. Like, they're not teaching me all the right things. They should be teaching us this. The tech they're teaching us is old.
And actually, I was just, that was my next question. I think it's so interesting. I'm in my halfway through term 3, so I haven't seen everything Red River has to offer. I've never seen the word Kubernetes in any of our material. Every single guest we've had, it's one of the first things they talk about. It's come up in some way. So yeah, no, please, sorry to interrupt. I just thought that was it's obviously this industry is all about teaching yourself and staying current. Mm-hmm. So yeah, so I just thought it's so interesting. All our guests bring in all these really interesting technologies, and the first time we hear them, there's a lot of blank faces because we're like, is that a kind of CSS? Is that a database? And then, but obviously there's so much changing that a college can't keep up with. It's up to you as a student and then as a professional, right?
Oh, absolutely. Like if there's one thing to take away from school is you're learning to learn. Like you're getting your foot in the door with coding. And honestly, like by the end of term 2, you learn everything there is to know about writing code. Like you understand classes, variables, data types, casting, all that. That's it. There's no more to that. Like it's easy. The hard part is, learning technologies and how you can integrate what you know about code into these things. Integration is a point of difficulty, like taking one technology and making it work with another. That comes with time. But definitely school is learning to learn. So if you're gonna get frustrated about learning old tech, don't, and put your frustration elsewhere. I promise you, if you are into it and you want a long, healthy career, that if you try really hard and are passionate about learning and success, that it will come.
Well, here's another DevOps question from Justin here. I know that DevOps addresses business and cultural problems. Just curious on the culture you've dealt with in the industry.
The culture I've dealt with. This is an interesting question. Hopefully I'll have a pretty cool answer for. So when I started with LotLinx, we were kind of at the tail end of our young, small, scrappy startup phase. There's horror stories out there about startups being toxic and having, toxic working hours and like strange culture. I think that's kind of the truth. It's not necessarily a bad thing, putting in all the hard work and, long hours in a situation like that, at the time maybe isn't ideal, but, you'll walk away with lots of, good skills from it. Wasn't the case particularly with me. I lucked in with, LotLinx was very cognizant of like burnout and, making sure developers are happy. kind of coming back to DevOps and how DevOps addresses culture, Ruby is a language. And one of the reasons why we picked Ruby is because Ruby, one of the reasons it's made is because it's made to be enjoyable to work with, easy to program with, and like a fun language to use. And I agree with that. I think Ruby's awesome. It can do everything you want. You know, you can write 30 lines of C# and 2 lines of Ruby if you want, you know, which is pretty cool. I had managers that were always really accommodating and with time and like requests and stuff. You know, culture, you kind of like, you run into everybody. You know, there's all sorts of personalities out there. You know, you get the know-it-alls, you get the quiet people. You know, you get like the memers. Like meme culture is obviously like a big thing in tech. Any advice that I have for like maybe working and like being professional is just try to be like an awesome coworker. You know, go out of your way to get along with everybody. Obviously do a good job, work hard, but being able to get along with people is really important. You know, anybody can learn to code, but not everybody has the, you know, all the stuff to be an awesome team member, like you know, like fun to work with. So definitely try to, you know, to kind of fit in and have fun on your team. I think that's important.
I mean, here's a question. I have one in the chat, and I'm going to get to it right away, but kind of brought it up there. Talking about soft skills. So you're obviously a very friendly, very comfortable speaking person. You reached out to me and to the group to. So is that something you worked on, or is that something you were just always like, or is it a struggle for you?
I've always had good people skills and good soft skills. There are some things in the soft skill realm that I definitely did need to work on and do need to work on. Earlier in the year, I wanted a pay increase. And what I did to get this was I interviewed with other companies. And I wanted an offer letter from another company so I could take it to my company and be like, look, I want you guys to, you know, to beat our match, this kind of thing. And like interviewing is hard. Interviewing is a skill that you need to learn. And the best way to learn it is by going out and doing it. You're not going to get it right the first try. Like you may get lucky and get a job on the first try, but you know, somewhere down the line, like, you know, if you're looking to expand or grow into a different position, it takes time. And you're going to fail at it a few times, but hopefully every time, you know, you get better and you learn, you know, how to answer questions the way interviewers are looking to have them answered and growing that way. But yeah, interviewing is like a difficult thing that I had to work at.
I definitely want to talk more about that, but I'm going to go back to the question I didn't ask right away. So from our chat, is DevOps sort of a 24/7 job? Are there people? Do you get the night shift kind of thing? Do you get the Christmas shift?
So my job is, you know, 8 hours a day kind of thing. As long as I show up to work for our first stand-up meeting, that's cool. I can kind of pick the 8 hours of the day I want to work. If I want to work like 4 a.m. and 4 p.m, that's cool. I typically do like an 8 to 4 or like a 9 to 5 kind of thing. But what we do have that kind of touches on the all day thing is we have an on-call rotation. You know, like we are responsible to make sure that infrastructure is up and running the way it should be. And we have three people in our rotation, and our rotation lasts for 7 days. So, you know, every third week I'm on call 24 hours a day for a week, which is a component of the job. To add to that, a really good job, no good job will ask you to be on call permanently. So if you're talking to employers that want you to be on call all the time and there's no break from it, that's like a big red flag.
Oh, absolutely. No, I mean, being on call permanently is fine for the first week, and then, yeah, and then that's a little too much. So you brought it up. I would love to talk about interviewing, and especially interviewing in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of us, well, not everyone, but a lot of people know the kind of questions like, what's your, you know, the cliche question, what's your greatest weakness? But in this industry that you're in, we have more technical type interviews. So would you be able to talk about, I know that, so LotLinx was your co-op position, right?
Yep.
So you had to interview as a very junior person, you know, not even a graduated student yet.
Yep.
How did you prepare for that?
So I kind of knew a couple people at LotLinx, so I had rapport. So I didn't actually have to sit through the like, are you a human being? Are we going to like you questions? But I did have to do like a take-home technical project, and it was during term 3, and it was literally the week where I did my first API call, and I like just learned about the concept of APIs and making API calls, and they gave me an API to work with that had it was like an artificial intelligence picture editing API. So you could send it pictures of cars and it would like blur the background and like sharpen the car image and stuff. And then it would like send you back the images or give you a link to download them at. And, you know, I had to learn how to make an API call the way they wanted, you know, using their tech and stuff, which is to be expected. You know, like you're not going to know every technology for a job you're applying for. And you will probably have to learn for an interview, which is a good segue into, you know, like luckily I got through that and did the API thing. But when I was doing my interviewing earlier in the year, I interviewed for Sportsnet, which was really cool. Their DevOps department is awesome. And they had like a really technical but fun kind of like technical portion. What they did is they gave me a cloud instance, and they told me that I had to use what is it? It's not Chef. I had to use Ansible to provision a mini Kubernetes cluster on it, and then I had to serve a web page from it that said the name of the node it was running on, which sounds pretty simple, but I had never worked with Ansible at the time. So I like had to learn the entire Ansible technology to be able to complete it. And it was hard. It took me like a few nights. Like I worked like 8 hours a night, like on top of my normal job to learn everything and implement it. And it was like a valuable, you know, process. I didn't get a job offer from them because I shit the bed, but you know, it's all part of the learning process.
Well, that's true. I didn't know about the take home aspect of because that was one thing that scared me was what can they ask me that I can demonstrate my knowledge in 5 minutes or less. Okay, well, that's something I think is really valuable. You're the first person to mention take home work, so that's really fantastic. I guess that brings me to my next question. Can you tell me all about LotLinx? So I know from my kind of brief research, they're essentially a big database based off vehicle identification numbers. Is that correct?
Yeah, we one of the things we do. Actually, sorry, we do business in the United States, and we're an advertising tech company. What we do is such a grand scope that it's really hard to explain in great detail to make it make sense. But we basically find good traffic. We find people that want to buy cars. We know when people want to buy cars based on like their Google ad profiles and like third-party tracking cookies. And people that do business with us, we send them that traffic. Or we show ads to the right people. And that sounds kind of simple, but there's a lot that goes into it. One of the things we do is we crawl every car dealer in the United States every 2 days. We look at their inventory. We keep track of every VIN number, every vehicle for sale, everything about it. We know its color. We know all its specs. We know all that. And we keep that in a database, and we don't ever get rid of any of that data. We hang on to it.
So kind of when you started there as a co-op and then moved forward, did you find mentors at your workplace? Was it all outside learning? Are you a part of a big team? Like, what's your day-to-day look like at LotLinx?
Okay. So the team name that I'm on is like the infrastructure team. Because we don't do just DevOps, we tackle some other things as well. But DevOps is like the core component of the job. And there's two people on my team. There's like the senior kind of dev team leader and myself. Like we kind of each specialize in things. Like there are certain things that they take care of that I don't, and vice versa. There's things that I take care of and they don't that I specialize in, which is like kind of a nice way to divide work. We have the VP of engineering who kind of manages us. So every 2 weeks, we have a work planning meeting with the VP and we kind of discuss what we're working on and what we're going to work on. And this is in addition to like our daily stand-ups and stuff. And that's like more of our major planning, when we're working on like bigger initiatives and whatnot. Day to day, like you kind of work on ongoing projects all the time. We use Jira as our project management and ticketing software. We plan our own work for the most part. Like I'm fortunate enough that I don't have like a project manager breathing down my neck, and I've lots of freedom to be able to create and execute my own initiatives. I sit down on the work in the morning. Like I'll read my emails. I'll take a look at Jira, see what tickets are on the go. And then usually like the first half of the day is my most productive half of the day, when I'm drinking my coffees and, haven't gotten distracted by the afternoon. And I usually get lots of work done in the morning. In the afternoon, things kind of slow down. I do more exploratory things in the afternoon usually. There's planned work, which is what I talked about, and there's unplanned work. And in our department, unplanned work is, unfortunately, part of the process. So like if something breaks, it's you stop what you're doing and you fix it. Hopefully you can fix it quick. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes fixing it takes days. And that's kind of what it is. Like Ian and I, my colleague, he's also a Bit grad. So our whole department is made up of Bit grads, which is kind of neat. I know like we work well together, and it's like it's pretty chill.
Well, it does sound nice to work with like fellow graduates, because you have that shared base. Like, okay, we know how to use C#. But here's something that we, at least so far, haven't touched too much on in the current Bit program. We're learning how to make code, but I noticed you mentioned deploying code for production. How do you go about that? Like I know how to write code. I can make it say hello world on my local machine. But what's the next step to integrate that into a production server, into integrating that to an existing code base? Like, how do you work on that? How do you prepare for that?
I would say the easiest way that's most tangible for you is to learn how to containerize applications. That code you ran, learn how to build it in a container and run it in a container. The concept of them is like really, it's a lot to wrap your head around at first, because there's like networking layers that are kind of confusing at first. But I can tell you this, if you understand Docker and you can write a working application inside a container, that gives you a massive leg up to competition around you. Because that's the industry standard is to run everything in containers and, to use Docker, throughout everything. So to get something into production, you make it run in a container, and then you pick like a deployment tool, or you can even do a script. So part of building the application in Docker is you're actually like, you build the Docker container, and then you want to push the container into a Docker repo. So Docker has its own repo. GitLab has project repos. So I would recommend using GitLab because it's all free. And it has all the commands that you need to know, just like in the browser for you. So you can just like copy and paste it. And, it's like a really big hand when you're learning Docker. And then you upload your container to this repo. And then containers have a concept called tags. So you can tag a container with anything you want, versions, commit hashes. But one of the popular ones is latest. You tag it latest, and then you untag whatever the container was before it, and you remove latest from it. Then when it comes time to deploy, you make sure whatever you're deploying it to has a Docker host running on it. So you make sure Docker's installed, and that would be a cool way to use a configuration automation tool like Ansible, which is way easier to set up than Chef. Use a tool like Ansible to install Docker, and then you could have the Docker host basically pull down the repo from wherever the repo is hosted, and then run the container remotely. It's kind of like in a nutshell, that's what deploying is.
Well, since we're talking a little bit about GitLab, but let's say Git in general, what's it like? We mentioned before the recording started that you're working from home.
Mm-hmm.
Collaborative code was probably, I mean, for me at least, a hard thing to wrap my mind around. But how do you kind of make that work working from home? Is your work kind of divvied up, or are you on a Zoom call 8 hours a day with that the colleague Ian you met? Kind of.
I don't even talk to Ian every day, to be honest. Like,
okay.
Yeah, but like we talk when we need to talk, but otherwise, like we're working. Collaborative code, I mean, that's what Git is meant to do. It's meant to support, an unlimited amount of developers working on the same code base. There's some best practices that go along with that. So there's your old kind of monolithic applications that are like massive code bases that many developers need to work on. They've been around forever. And with those, you create a large point or a large item that can break. And monolithic code is, it's difficult to work with. What people do nowadays is they run microservice topology, where they write bits of code that perform one thing. They write an API that is just going to go to a database and get this certain data. That'll get deployed. You want different data, you write a different API. And what that allows you to do is it shrinks code bases. It makes the point of breakage much smaller. So if a monolithic application breaks, everything in the application is broken and it won't work. If a microservice is broken, everything else that doesn't touch that microservice should work just fine. And a microservice that's broken will be broken. So that makes it a lot easier, working with smaller bits of code. And then in Git, there's the concept of like branches, and there's also releases and tags. So usually people will create a branch off of, main for a feature, like a feature branch. They'll write, their code into that. And then they'll create a merge request, and someone's boss or senior developer will review the code and approve the merge request. And there's also another way to look at it, where people always deploy to main, but they hide new features behind flags. So you can push new code out into production, but have a feature hidden behind a flag, and the code will go out there when you deploy it, but the feature behind the code won't until you set the flags to do so. And that's another way that people can handle that. But that's how multiple people contribute code to a singular repo.
I'm gonna do interviewer bad form, and I'm gonna inject my own thing in this question too. This is, you probably know, Stephen. I'm gonna say this to everyone in this meeting and watching the recording. I worked a summer job with it was a startup, and the lead, I'll use developer, he's a very nice man, but he's a mechanical engineer by trade. He self-taught a bunch of Python code, and he didn't put one comment in lines and lines of code. You have no idea how hard it is to understand someone else's code when there's absolutely no documentation. So all that dumb stuff that the Bit and BTM programs teach you to like comment, this is a method. There is a reason they do that. It's your code makes sense to you, but it will make sense to nobody else. Justin's also asking, like, what kind of like chat ops stuff, like communication, do you guys use? Stuff like Slack, or is it just basic emails, or yeah?
We buy big into chat ops. So we use Slack as all of our day-to-day communication. Email is only super technical or things, I would say 99% of our communication is done via Slack, and emails like very formal. We need like a paper trail on this kind of thing. Or like if something comes to us from, like a third party, we may like forward it off to someone else in the email, but everything is done in Slack. And chat-offs, which is, a cool thing with DevOps, is I've written, I don't know how many different chat bots that integrate our tools with Slack to make people's lives easier. Like, so many. One of the ones that I like to use a lot is I wrote an integration with Jira where I can create a ticket in Slack by messaging a bot, like a line of text, and it'll create the ticket for me and send me a link versus going into Jira and clicking buttons and typing in a bunch of different boxes. But we do a lot of things like that, and that's a pretty common thing to write, chat bots to solve certain use cases you may have with an employer. And I'm going to say a little thing about commenting code. Obviously, commenting code is important. Reading other people's code is a skill that is important to learn and pick up on. And a lot of times, if you're working in like a company that moves quickly and is very agile, there's not going to be a lot of comments in code. Companies that move fast don't necessarily allocate a ton of time for documentation. Like there will be things like usually companies will have the wikis or like a Confluence where people create large bits of documentation. There might be like lines in code, but I wouldn't, if you're going out into the field, necessarily expect perfect comments as like a gold standard. Self-commenting code is a thing.
Well, that's good to know. Yeah, you're right. Probably, yeah. Reading someone else's code is a skill. I mean, like anything. Maybe let's change gears a little bit. I know we have some senior students in here, but also people just starting out in the program. The IT programs through Red River College probably is not that distant memory for you. You've only been out for a few years yourself. Kind of now that you have the top-down view of your time at Red River College, is there any advice you would give to students to kind of get the most out of their education?
I got frustrated a lot with, thinking I was learning the wrong things. And in hindsight, that was like misplaced frustration. Like I was learning the right things and I was like learning to learn. There are courses that are a lot better than the others. Like network admin is the worst course in college. I'm sorry. Is it network admin? No, it's the Windows network admin, the one where you need to spin up all those damn Windows servers.
I think they call it server admin. Yeah.
Server admin. Yeah, that course was shit. That's there. It's a thing. There's things in there you're going to learn, like organizational groups and how like user databases work and stuff. So like there's good in everything. What else could I add? Take your time to learn Git. I don't know how integrated Git is with the program now, but when I was there, we didn't learn Git whatsoever. But teach yourself early on. Commit all of your code, create a private repo and like whatever Git provider you want, and push all your code to your own repo. Get in the habit of knowing the workflows. I had a situation where my laptop died on me, like days before an exam. And had I not had everything backed up to Git, it would have been a disaster. But I did, and it was very simple to go back to the exact point I was at with a new computer. So definitely take your time to learn that. It's really only a few commands and some pretty easy concepts. No matter where you go and what you do, you're going to use Git. Making friends is important. It'll be good to have friends around the industry, and that way you can ask questions. Making sure you're getting industry standard wages and being open with your friends about kind of what you're getting paid sounds kind of crazy, but don't get taken advantage of by employers. With COVID, came a lot of changes to the workforce. And a lot of companies started looking a lot wider at where they're hiring from, which changed how things work quite a bit. So instead of like a Winnipeg company competing with other Winnipeg companies for wages, which was a thing, now they're competing with Canada-wide, right? And anybody with skills can go and, get a job remotely anywhere in Canada. And, companies need to be able to, pay people appropriately. And, that's super important. So like talk to your bros, talk to everybody, and, make sure you're getting a good deal out of everything. Don't get ripped.
Yeah, that's one thing that's kind of a subconscious part of our societies. It's rude to talk about your wages, but you're right. It can be easy to be taken advantage of, and yeah, we have a great advantage here in Winnipeg in the COVID and hopefully now post-COVID world, that we have a relatively inexpensive standard of living compared to places like Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
So we might as well compete with their wages, right? Sometimes, yeah. Well, you mentioned before that when you were trying to negotiate a raise at LotLinx, that you looked for other letters of offer. Now, did you work with recruiters at all, or did you just go out there and kind of pound the pavement?
I did a little bit of everything. Having a good LinkedIn, it may be a point of frustration for some people. It's part of playing the game. If you're active on LinkedIn, if you go and like a post or two, if you keep your skills updated, I would say that's all really important for getting recruiter attention. After you have like X amount of experience and you've been working for a while, recruiters will start coming to you. Early on, though, it might be good to reach out to some recruiters. There's lots of recruiters on there. You can search for them. There's good recruiters and bad recruiters. I worked with all sorts. The good recruiters, you're going to know right away that you're working with someone professional. Good recruiters, before they set you up with an interview, they'll give you like a synopsis of things to maybe study. Maybe they know the interviewer better. Maybe they'll say, wear a dress shirt, be prepared to answer these kinds of questions. That's what a good recruiter will do for you. There's different tech out there like hired.com. I had some success with hired.com. Some people reaching out to me after setting up a profile on there. And then you can even go on LinkedIn and, apply for jobs directly on there, which is where I ended up finding the company that got me the offer letter. And it's all good ways to look for employment for sure.
That's good. That's one thing I've never really engaged with recruiters, but you've mentioned a couple times in this talk today the importance of networking. So as we come to the end of our time, I'm going to ask a question that you might not have an answer to, and that's fine. Is there anything that I should have asked you today that you wanted to talk about that I didn't get to off the top of your head?
I wasn't sure exactly, kind of what to expect, but no, this was good. Like the questions were good. I enjoy it. Like I reached out to you because what I talked about today was an area that I wish the college would have done more for us, in terms of like bringing people in to tell you what it's actually like and like what to expect. The whole time I was in college, I'm like, what's next? Like, what's the big thing I'm gonna have to learn about programming? And it was anxiety inducing. What's next? No, like that's it. You know it all already. You're just learning like how to integrate things. And had I known that earlier, after semester 2, I probably would have been a lot less stressed out. But like, yeah, it really is that simple, like the programming part of it.
I know for one, I definitely feel less stressed out about, as someone who's passed term 2, I feel less stressed out now that you said, everything you need to know. You just have to refine and integrate. So thank you very, very much, Stephen, for taking time out of your day to come talk to us. I've worked in a different industry before this, and I'm really impressed by IT that people like you really seem interested in wanting to give back and helping out students like us. I don't think that's common across every career path in the world. So I really appreciate that. I know everyone else appreciates that. Again, if you have any, as long as you don't mind, we'll probably share this recording. A lot of what you said is really prescient to stuff like our professional development classes. The instructors take advantage of us a little bit because we go out and make the content for them to share. But thank you very much, Stephen. I will let you go.
Can I add one thing at the end? Can I plug? Can I make a plug for something?
Please.
We're hiring right now. LotLinx is hiring right now. I'm the hiring manager. I made a post in the job section on the Discord, and there is a job ad up. So if there's anybody here who is in term 5 and is interested in a position starting like after you graduate, please feel free to, you can reach out to me on Discord. You can send me an email with your resume. That's a thing. We're hiring. And we're specifically targeting Red River grads. That was a decision we made in our department to look specifically for Red River grads. And other than that, if you have any questions, I'm on my computer a lot. Discord's always open. I'm an open book. You're not bothering me. Please feel free to ask questions, or even if you need help with homework, I'm happy to to give back any way I can to anyone here.
I think a lot of people are going to take you up on that offer, Stephen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
And as we lose Stephen here, before everyone else jumps out, one, thank you very much for attending. That was great. We've had nothing but great speakers here in this program we do, and I had high expectations for Stephen, but he shared a lot of stuff. I liked his focus on stuff he wished he learned before, instead of just saying like learn your networking layers kind of thing. But what I wanted to talk about real quick is we're on our enriched activity week this week. So hopefully everyone has a little break, a little time to catch up on assignments and whatnot. And I was talking to some other people around, and I was thinking, why don't we have a game night on this Thursday? So that would be Thursday, October 21st. Just a casual hangout. I see some familiar names in this chat and some unfamiliar names. Everyone's welcome. As well, we're going to be sharing this recording out with everyone. But if you want to come hang out, play some casual games, just chat, get to know each other, it'd be a great opportunity. So why don't we say Thursday, October 21st at 7:30 Central Standard Time, 7:30 Winnipeg time in the evening. I'm not going to play games at 7:30 in the morning. But other than that, I'm going to make a post about that right away. But if you're free, put that in your calendar. And I would like to thank, again, everyone for coming out. It really means a lot to have all of us out here. I think what Stephen talks about is you have to put in the effort, and taking time out of your free time to attend stuff like that is really going to help you stand out from other students. So good afternoon, everyone, and we'll see you again, hopefully Thursday evening.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you guys.
Bye.
See you.